Let's talk about the Eagles versus the Vikings. Let's get it started. After the Vikings lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they were 6.5-point favorites. How did that work out? They head to Philadelphia to play the Eagles, who had their own close matchup against the Patriots. Now, they pulled it out. They won by 5, but they gave Mac Jones 2 shots at driving down the field and scoring a touchdown. A couple more toe taps that could have been a more interesting game, but they won, and a win is a win. This is the NFL. Ain't no participation trophies. Let's go over some start and sits for this game. Starting with the quarterback position, obviously you're starting Jalen Hurts. He's an absolute beast, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He had a down game last week. Expect him to bounce back. We're gonna sit Kirk Cousins going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. They have a great defense, and I don't want any piece of that. Moving on to the running back position, Alexander Madison is the starting running back for the Vikings. I think this is a meh play. The Philadelphia Eagles have a good defense, but Madison is going to get a vast majority of the work, so I think that he's a play, but he's a running back too. In regards to the Eagles, the lead running back from last week, Kenneth Gainwell, is out with rib injury, as well as Reed Blankenship, ribs, and cornerback James Bradbury, concussion, out. Fletcher Cox, questionable with ribs. James Bradbury is a pretty good corner. And Fletcher Cox seems questionable, but if he misses, that's a big deal. Side note, this was reported by the Philadelphia Eagles as of Wednesday's injury report. Yikes. This doesn't make me super excited about the running backs for Philadelphia. Kenneth Gainwell was the only real running back I was interested in from this backfield. Now that he's down, I think DeAndre Swift is probably going to be the lead back. And Rashad Penny, who was inactive last week, I think he's active this week, but honestly, I'm not trying to start any of them if I don't have to. At wide receiver, you're obviously starting Justin Jefferson. You drafted him number 1 or number 2 for a reason. He plays every week, duh. AJ Brown, also an auto start every week, no questions asked. Devonta Smith, also great start this week. The Vikings defense does not scare me. I have him as a high-end wide receiver too. It wouldn't surprise me if he snuck into the top 12 this week. After having a meh performance against the Patriots, Eagles are trying to show out. And if you really need a flex play, you could play Jordan Addison. 6 targets, 4 receptions for 61 yards and a touchdown. A lot of those yards came from 1 deep touchdown. Without the touchdown and that reception, he was down to like 5 to 8 points. So I definitely don't think that he's a must start, but I think he can break glass in case of emergency. Philadelphia Eagles are no slouch, but he's a talented young receiver. If you're desperate, you can start him. Not a preferred start though. Moving on to tight end, TJ Hawkinson must start every week, obviously. Same thing with Dallas Goedert. Yes, I know he had a goose egg last week. 1 target, 0 receptions. Honestly, I have no idea why they didn't get him involved. They clearly needed to move the ball down the field so it wasn't a 5-point game at the end of the game, but the pass is the pass. Dallas Goedert is a top 6 tight end. Start him every week. Don't go to the waiver wire. Don't start Hunter Henry over him. Don't get cute. He's Dallas Goedert. Start your studs. Definitely start the Philadelphia Eagles defense if you have them. Start them every week, obviously. They're one of the best defenses in the league. And absolutely do not start the Vikings defense. That is a terrible idea. They only had 2 against my Bucks. Yikes. And for kickers, start Jake Elliott every week. He's a good kicker. All right, every week I pick the games against the spread. Before we pick this game though, these teams played last year. Let's see how it went. Oh, it was a butt whooping. Vikings lose 7-24. They were also in Philadelphia. No one scored after halftime. That is weird. All right, here's the thing. Let's check out the spread because I already know who's going to win the game, but the spread really matters in this one. The Philadelphia Eagles are favored by 7.5 against the Minnesota Vikings. That's a lot of points. I mean, the Vikings aren't scrubs. I know I just showed you how they got their butts kicked last time, but 7.5 points? That's a lot of points. The Eagles are definitely the better team, both offensively and defensively, but 7.5? While they're missing their starting running back, one of their best cornerbacks, a safety, possibly a defensive tackle? All right, it's time to pick this game. Eagles are 7.5-point favorites. Give me the Vikings. The Vikings are not a terrible team. They're not as good as the Eagles, but they do have one of the best wide receivers in the league and an up-and-coming wide receiver too, and a solid tight end and a solid running back. Don't get me wrong. The Vikings are not winning this game, but they're not losing by more than a touchdown. If this was 6.5, it'd be a lot easier for me to choose the Eagles and just be like, they can win by a touchdown. But they got to win by more than a touchdown. That just feels like a lot. Call me crazy. Don't make this fantasy football mistake. It could cost you your week. This is my fantasy football roster. If you have a player that plays on Thursday night, like Alexander Madison, do not put them in the flex spot. You want to move them up to the running back spot. Even if Alexander Madison was a flyer that I just happened to want to play this week and I threw him in my flex, you want to play anybody that's playing early, which is Thursday, in your position spot. For example, like we just did, Alexander Madison was in the flex down here. I moved him up to the running back spot. And it would be the same thing if it was a wide receiver in the flex spot. You want to play them in your wide receiver spot. The reason you do this is, let's say you left Alexander Madison in your flex. And let's say you play him on Thursday. This spot is now locked. Your flex, the spot that gives you flexibility to move, is now locked. So let's say a running back goes down. Miles Sanders goes down. Well, if you don't have another running back to put there, it can really hamper your flexibility. The same thing with wide receiver. If your wide receiver goes down, you have to replace them with a wide receiver. But if you move the Thursday night player into the running back spot, you now have flexibility. If Miles Sanders gets injured, you can replace Miles Sanders with either a running back or a wide receiver, increasing your flexibility. Long story short, every Thursday, you should check to make sure any Thursday player is not in your flex spot. You want them either in your running back spot or a wide receiver spot. Trust me, this will win you weeks. If you make that mistake and you don't have somebody to play, it hurts here because you know you messed up. And now you have to sit with that all Sunday being like, I had to start this scrub because I couldn't start a wide receiver off my bench because I started a running back in my flex spot. Don't do it. You're welcome. I have a fantasy football tip that your league mates will hate you for, but it could help you win your league. I think about the waiver wire differently than other people. Yes, it's a place to add players, but it's also a place to search for hidden gems. See, the thing about fantasy football is everybody is so consumed in their own world that they're thinking about who they need to add and who they are dropping. Have you ever had a difficult time deciding who to drop and being like, man, I really don't want to drop person X? Newsflash, that happens to 11 other people every week. So every week after the waivers run, I go and look at who was dropped. And trust me, you will be surprised at what you find. I have found plenty of league winners, and so have my opponents off of me. This gets especially crazy during bye weeks. People don't want to drop that quarterback, or that backup running back, or the receiver, but they have to. You only get so many spots, so search for those hidden gems. You're welcome. One man's trash is another man's treasure. Good luck treasure hunting.